everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler, and I am the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios. We're a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I've been involved in 17 startups and several unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai. We love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. We know that we have a lot of infobesity out there. We need to address those issues succinctly. Anyhow, I have an incredible guest today. So Stratos Davlos is an interesting, very interesting entrepreneur, very interesting business person, and more importantly, he is a guru in artificial intelligence. So he spent time, he's from Greece originally, went to Cranfield University and Yale School of Management, ended up having jobs at companies like Apple, Kydera, and IBM Watson. So we're going to talk about IBM Watson and some of the things that he's into today, like Innoplex, Astra, and some of the other opportunities that he's had. He's a hands-on and visionary technology leader, experienced in building highly effective teams, inspired to innovate and overachieve. So thank you very much. Here he comes. Hi, Stratos. How are you today?
Hi, Gary. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. So tell me a little bit about it. So you're originally from Europe, and you speak Greek. So where were you born originally?
So I was born in Athens, but I was raised on the island of Crete. So I spent a lot of time.
What was it like? So what's Crete like? Was it interesting growing up as a kid? What did you do for fun?
Well, in hindsight, Crete is the equivalent of Texas, if you like. It's a great island. The food is fantastic. The hospitality is through the roof, and there are a lot of really, really smart people that I went to school with that accomplished, and I'm very proud to be their friend. It was the living on the island is nothing in comparison to living in San Francisco. But philosophy is in our bloodstream, and we look at life slightly differently. We have a very optimistic point of view, and it's a great place to be. So if you find yourself in a position to go and visit the island, let me know, and I'll give you a lot of tips.
Oh, that sounds great. So what did you like as a kid? I mean, you got all these ruins and things around you. Did you guys explore them as a kid? Did you go out and say, oh, let's go check this out? And I mean, what did you do? Like, did you swim in the ocean, snorkel, boat? What kind of things did you do as a kid?
Well, I've done a lot of swimming. I was a swimmer since I was 5 years old, all the way through college. We did a lot of field trips with the school. And, you learn a lot about ancient Greece and ancient Greek and Latin and history throughout your schooling years. So I think we understand a lot about how the world became to be the way it is today.
So you did that, then you end up becoming you became a chief scientist at a company called eGain. What was that like? I mean, to go from Yale School of Management to eGain, you start out a chief scientist and then became the head of worldwide professional services. Where was eGain located at the time?
So I wasn't at Yale at the time. My undergrad was in Crete, and then I did my graduate work in the UK at the University of Cranfield. Mm-hmm. My undergrad was in mechanical engineering, and my graduate work was in artificial intelligence. So naturally, I started working on thermodynamics models, building simulation, and energy consumption modeling. I've done that for a company called National Energy Services that did a lot of work with the Energy Efficiency Office in the UK. Luckily, a US company, the first applied AI company that went public in, I think, 1995, was Inference Corporation. So
Hmm.
I started working for them. My thesis was pretty much along the lines of what the company specialized on in conversational diagnostics. So I moved out here as a computer scientist researcher, if you like, and I lived under a rock for a couple of years and worked on some great innovation in that field that became the flagship product. eGain acquired Inference, and that's how I transitioned to eGain. So I was the chief scientist at Inference and then transitioned to eGain. And eGain, I spent there about almost 10 years. And I climbed up the corporate ladder. I learned a lot about the business. I was a techie guy that became an executive. And I think my career took off from there.
And how was it, to go from techie to dealing with corporate politics? I mean, because there's a lot of politics when you're in corporations. How is that, Stratos? I mean, you've seen a lot of stuff without mentioning specifics, but you've seen a lot. How is that transition to going from, to the chief scientist to now you're dealing with the politics? I know it's a problem when they have meetings to talk about meetings. You're starting to have a challenge, but how was it? What was it like? Because you probably wanted to create, but how was it?
Well, to be honest, eGain wasn't as political as other companies. Good ideas prevailed. Their CEO was very hands-on and fairly technical. When you're a techie and you hear a no to a proposal that you make, you take it to heart. But when there is kind of plausible explainability as to why this won't work, which is what I think ASHU embraced, then politics is not an issue. So I don't think eGain was the place where, politics prevailed. I think good ideas prevailed there.
That's interesting. And so then you went to Kaidera, right? You went to CRM Knowledge Beam, and then you made the leap over to Apple. So and how was that? How was it dealing with Steve Jobs was still there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you've done your homework. So I joined Cadera as their CTO. They were a French company. And it was at an interesting point where Cadera was moving their engineers and their assets to the US. And then we end up going through an M&A with a company called Logistics. So my time there was relatively short because the goal was to take the company through the acquisition. And then I decided, like every other person wants to be the founder and CEO of a company, I decided to start my own, only to realize that there's some key ingredients. I learned a lot. So one of the things I've learned was you have to have a compatible partner in any venture, where you collaborate and you uplift yourself when there's downs in the business. But I did go solo, and I think that created a lot more work for me. Good revenue for others, but not for myself. And that was the time where I was trying to kind of sell, hopefully, the company services, but eventually myself to Apple. So Apple hired me to help them with the search initiatives because that was one of my specialties. So that's how I transitioned to Apple. I don't think Apple was a little bit more political, just to go back to your previous question, than eGain. But in hindsight, that was probably one of the best companies I ever worked for. It's an amazing company. Steve Jobs was alive. And I went through also his passing, and the memorial service was absolutely outstanding. And the company then goes through a transition, and Tim Cook has proven to be an exceptional leader. So he's done an amazing job at Apple. So that was my journey to Apple. And then from there, I met a tycoon out of Asia, who was building a telecommunications company from the ground up. Mukesh Ambani and Akash and the family. And I met him through an introduction, and then I thought this will be an amazing opportunity for me. So that's how I transitioned out of Apple to join Jio.
And so, got a question for you. I want to go back to the time at Apple because I actually started a cross-platform search company. So I'm the founder of Eva, which was acquired by Vizier, and actually we were transitioned to remote workforce management. But I got a question for you. You know, today we have a problem with infobesity, right? We got so many different disparate sources, so many silos. It's hard as heck, to keep track of Facebook Messenger, Google Drive, Dropbox, Box, Slack, Telegram, Signal. I mean, we've got to come up with something that allows us to be able to search all these repositories. I know we did it. With Eva, my partner David Yang and I had done it, but people weren't ready for it. But Stratos, I mean, it's killing people. I mean, there's the average person has about 300,000 items in their personal cloud. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You, Stratos, smart guy, but how many times the last 2 weeks has somebody said, "Hey, Stratos, I sent you a message. Where'd you send it?" Email. I just had it happen to me, by the way. I just had it happen. I ordered an Electrolux washing machine, and it got put into my spam, and so I wasn't alerted. And they said, "Well, we can't deliver it now." And this is the second time, but I can't look at everything all the time. When are we going to get to a point where we start to consolidate all these different data repositories to make one search so that we can? And I'm not asking definitively for the answer, but it's a big problem, right? I mean, I talked to the head of the quantum lab at Harvard, Pranea, same issue. A lot of folks, when are we going to come up with technologies like that? How far are we away?
That's a very good question, and some companies are ahead of the curve. Your particular problem has to do with how effective your spam filtering is, because the message that was classified as spam should have gone straight into your inbox. But if you have multiple emails or multiple pieces of information and you want to create a federated search capability, that's something that's not new. It was one of my charters at Apple, because you have content, for example, that Apple Care has. You have content that the Apple Online Store has. You have content that is for the developers and the development ecosystem. So creating that level of federation is straightforward. Let me go back. There's an easy way to do it, which is how Apple used to do it with bento boxes. So you write a query. I'm going to submit that query to all the search engines available. I'm going to bring the results back and put them in their own box on the same page. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that you have to be agnostic of the different boxes and look in different places. The reason companies gravitate towards creating those bento boxes is because they don't know how to merge the results. And if they merge the results in a single list, they don't know how to order them, because typically the search engines behind each one of these assets or in front of each one of these assets is not the same. So you get Apple Care using technology A and marketing using a different technology. So merging becomes a problem. But once you solve that problem and figure out a way to prioritize results regardless where they came from, then you can have a universal search. But if you look forward to where we are today, if you have a question or you're looking for something, there are a lot more advanced technologies like GDP3, for example, large language models, BERT, that have the ability to answer your question, if you like, or find what you're looking for by indexing everything and analyzing everything.
No, I hear about it every day and concerned about it because, the amount of information, as I said, in the personal cloud is about 300,000 items. But if you look at 5 years out, it's following the same trajectory of the World Wide Web, which means it's doubling every year. in 5 years we're going to have 10 million items. I mean, it's bad now. It's going to be awful then. So out there, startups, go out and look for cross-platform searches. Think about it and make them so they're intuitive, right? And they're easy to use. And, I remember when we did it, we said a PowerPoint from a guy from Boston. We could actually search like that across the platforms, and it worked. But we were too early for it. But if you're out there, could be really interesting. So
there is some capability that Apple developed. Sorry to interrupt. That I'm pretty impressed. I don't know if you lately tried to search your documents or your photographs. I think Apple made some significant improvement in the way they index things and the way they search. So the query you just described is feasible today on Mac, but only for the things that the Mac knows. One of the projects that was very intriguing that I worked on while I was at Apple was kind of social media listening. So you have super fire hoses, like the Twitter fire hose, and plus others that aggregate content, plus things that you want to keep an eye on, like Mac rumors, so on and so forth. And at that level, you need to understand where the buzz is, right? What are the topics that you're discussing? So there's a lot of machine learning to on the fly analyze the information, categorize them, and have some compelling visuals for somebody who's moderating or monitoring what's happening outside the corporate world to take action. So I think that is also a very interesting project. And at Apple, that was the first time that I actually got exposed to big data. So you're looking at 600 to 800 megabits per second when Tim Cook was on stage. That's a lot of chatter that comes from multiple sources. So that's another area of interest.
No, that's really interesting. So you did the Reliance Jio, then you went over to IBM Watson. So what was that like? How was it? My daughter, by the way, worked for IBM for a few years. But what was it like? I mean, how was it? You did everything from federated learning to NLU, NLC, those Watson Assistant, all kinds of different models. What was it? Was it captivating at IBM Watson? Was it interesting? Are there breakthroughs taking place? Because we don't look at IBM as a company that's doing a lot of breakthroughs, right? You look at it kind of like this companies that just been around for 100 years or so. What was it like there?
First of all, I don't agree with your statement, and I'll tell you why. IBM has the most impressive research capability outside government. So if you look at the researchers that work in Almaden, in Yorktown, in Haifa, in Tokyo, they're outstanding and at the top of their field. I was in charge of several assets, NLP, NLU, as you said. So these are the APIs, right? The ingredients that you need to put together to create a solution that you call artificial intelligence. And I was also on top of assets like Watson Assistant and Discovery. So these are products that you can buy from IBM. And the key for IBM to be successful is figure out a way to incentivize the researchers to produce marketable assets that contribute to your business OKR. And as you know, researchers gravitate towards writing documents, pursuing some scientific goals, and you need to, and I think IBM is already doing that with the 3+3 program that Dario talked about. You want to fund their ambitions, but at the same time, you want them to produce assets that plug into the things that make money for IBM. So if I was to give you an example, if you look at Watson Assistant, it's a great product. You can plug in front of it the speech to text, text to speech capability. So now you have a voice assistant.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to win the market, you want to reduce the time to value. So the total cost of ownership for deploying a chat box needs to drop. And one way to do that is to generate intents out of, chats that you have with your customers or documents that you have produced as part of your support function.
Mm-hmm.
That is a research project.
Mm-hmm.
So having a researcher for IBM plugging into the actual engineering and business to produce that asset is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
The way to kind of coordinate all of that is through OKRs. So you want to make sure that the research OKRs are aligned with the engineering OKRs, that are aligned with the business OKRs, that are aligned with the company OKRs. And I think IBM is on the path to do that. IBM also has I wouldn't say a marketing problem. Maybe it had a marketing problem where it really hyped AI before it was compelling enough. But I think IBM also had a problem monetizing some of the assets that were ahead of its time. So, for example, the speech technology. How do you make money with that? Well, they sold the asset to Nuance. Nuance made a ton of money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Project Debater, which can be very comparable with the GDP3 stuff, right? The ability to create rebuttals real time based on an argument.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way to make money out of it. And if IBM figures that one out, then you will see again IBM being at the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm. How
Now, these
was
are
it?
my personal opinions, by the way, Gary.
No, I like it. So, we went through a lot of stuff. What's going on with these? I got a question for you. Transformer models, Stratos. Do you know much about the transformer models? And
Of
now
course.
we go to GPT 3.5. So, what's happening out there? What's the state of this? Let's talk about the transfer for. If you can just talk about transformer models and why they're so important to us, because I'm hearing a lot about that from our startups all over the world. But can you talk? Let's talk about that. And then secondly, GPT. Actually, I have my next article in Forbes is on GPT 3 plus, right? But let's talk about GPT and why it's gonna, how it's gonna change our lives.
All right. So in a classic machine learning world, you want to use what we call features,
Mm-hmm.
and then you want to label them and train a model that, given a new set of features, you predict
Mm-hmm.
which label it belongs to. So that's a classic classification
Mm-hmm.
problem. Then you look at, okay, well, giving a set of features as one shot solves
Mm-hmm.
some problems, but
Mm-hmm.
then there's temporal features that come in a sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So recurrent neural networks came about. They're very expensive to build, and they have some problems. They have what we call vanishing gradients. So if you have really long sentences, the
Mm-hmm.
value, the importance of one word given the surrounding words diminishes the further
Mm-hmm.
back they are in the sequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here came attention-based models that did two things that were interesting. From the compute standpoint, there was no forward feed to the next set of neurons for calculation,
Mm-hmm.
but we used some positional encoding to understand what the word it was and how
Mm-hmm.
important that word was in the
Mm-hmm.
context of surrounding. And I'm oversimplifying here, but transformers are based on that model where you use embeddings, you use sentence sequences,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the other side, you can use the outcome of the front end model to do translation, question answering,
Mm-hmm.
entity identification, and all of these wonderful things. The first time I actually worked with transformers was at Innoplexis. If you
Mm-hmm.
look at if you look at the life sciences world and you compare that with the terms that you use in the English language, there will be about 100,000 terms in the English language that will allow you to understand the context of the query given the corpus that you train your model on. But when you
Mm-hmm.
look at the biomedical terms, there are over 3 million of them, and there's a lot of sparsity in that. So we use the equivalent of BERT, which is a bidirectional transformer.
Mhm.
There's a version of it that's BioBERT. And then what you
Mhm.
wanted to do is either use knowledge transfer or one-shot learning to customize it to the domain you want.
Mhm.
From the compute standpoint, it's a very expensive thing to do. And we were very grateful because during the pandemic, we got access to supercomputers for free.
Mhm.
And that allowed us to do a lot of the training. Um, but if you're a startup, you need a lot of capital to pursue that.
Mhm.
So fast forward, then what do? You look at GTP, right, which
Mhm.
is extremely advanced. And can do a lot of synthetic stuff.
Mhm.
It's projected that OpenAI will make uh, at least $1 billion in 2024.
Mhm.
If you put ChatGPT on as a center capability of your offering, let's say that you're in a chatbot business, and now all of a sudden becomes very expensive, then you're not investable because you don't have your own IP. You rely on somebody else's IP. But the rule of thumb is if you want to control the response from a
Mhm.
chatbot, then you have to understand the intent. You have to identify what's the official corporate response, and you have to take action based on the subsequent parts of the dialogue, so you can automate stuff. But then
Mhm.
you have all of these things that are long tail things. You can employ Chat GTP three or GDP three to provide answers from documents that you already have. One of the problems is that today it's trained on old content, about a year, maybe 2 years old. So, and the other problem is eventually you have to pay for those services.
Mhm.
And it's not just Chat GDP, right? There are many other companies out there. I think Google also has a pretty compelling model with their Lambda, and there are many others, large models that I've seen.
How's it going to be? I mean, how's our life going to change? I mean, how, like, in this at the scope, um, and I know one of my friends right now is using uh, technology, Chat GPT, to actually work on patents, right? To help them write patents, like, and this is a really sharp engineer with a master's degree and business. I mean, it's sharp, but I mean, it's just the world's fundamentally changing. When's it going to be to a point where things are so into on this unsupervised AI world, we're not going to be able to tell the difference between a human response and the system's response? How far away from that?
And to add to that concern, models can be vulnerable.
Hmm.
They can be manipulated at runtime, or
Hmm.
you can embed, if you like, noise
Hmm.
in a training set so
Hmm.
that the outcome can be controlled by you.
Hmm.
And that was part of the research
Oh,
that
wait a
IBM
minute.
was.
So then, so you can control the outcome. So you could actually that's like brainwashing. Actually,
Yeah,
it's
you
kind of
can
that's what.
contaminate the scene with noise,
Hmm.
and what you're saying right now
Hmm.
can be transcribed to word. We can put words in your mouth,
Hmm.
right? Or you can contaminate a visual scene with the equivalent of pixels,
Hmm.
very low tech stuff, and then your uh, um, autonomous vehicle may
Hmm.
misinterpret what it's actually seeing. So
So
there's a
what
lot of skill.
happens? Like, I mean, you're going to have. It sounds like the bad guys could go out and ladies could go out and hack and put in this. I mean, when are we going to have to? How do we defend against it? And when do we think this is going to start to happen? Because it sounds like actually, to be honest with you, it can happen now, right? This is not something in the future. It can happen now. When are we going to
Yeah,
get to
absolutely.
downloaded affects all the cars or a certain category of cars and and corrupts them essentially?
So there are some pretty compelling and effective assets that I'm aware of.
Hmm.
Um, uh, we worked on those while I was at IBM, and that was several years back. So I'm pretty sure that IBM has taken it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first thing is to recognize that you might have a problem, and I think that now that's widely um, um, uh, accepted. Everybody knows that that's a concern,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think IBM is a little bit ahead of others in terms of the effectiveness of identifying vulnerabilities on models.
Mm-hmm.
One of the assets that worked towards that was the AI open scale asset that
Mm-hmm.
we created during my days there. I think now it's rebranded to something like Watson open scale of some sort. It did some interesting things. One is debiasing models,
Mm-hmm.
and what was on the plan was to also identify vulnerabilities for the models, either on the training side or the model itself, by just
Mm-hmm.
uh, using perturbing the input and seeing how it behaves. And so that's something that we have to do. There's no doubt about it. But going back to your original point, if you use generative AI and you misuse it to put, to create videos of, let's say, the president of the United States saying X and he never said X,
Mm-hmm.
um, the impact of that is extremely scary. We're not there yet, but then you cannot even believe your own eyes and ears.
Well, that's it. I
And
mean, how do you tell what's real and what isn't real, right? And if you're
exactly.
saying you can go down through an impact, you can get on your car. I mean, what's to say you couldn't have some fake radio station that has subliminal suggestions coming out, right? And
Yeah,
I mean, you
you're
have to control those levels. So it's a interesting time. So we need to look at cybersecurity using things like secret sharing and other techniques to be able to help us get down through and solve these challenges. So startups that are out there, there's a lot of interesting things happening with this, the variational autoencoders, ladder networks, transformer models, synthetic data, all this. But what we got to do is it's opportunities for each and every one of you to go out there, create your companies, look at these technologies. Think about it. We are in a state of infobesity. Look at it, the planet. It's about data. And the people that know, we're gonna have two classes of society. I don't know if you agree with me, Stratos, but the people that know data and can use it in their advantage, and the people that don't, it's going to be really stratified. It's already started, right? But it's going to be really stratified. So we need to democratize opportunity and give everybody a chance to go out there, you know, go out there and study, go out there and use these models, go out there and learn, because the knowledge truly in this environment is going to be power. And infobesity is what we have to solve, the challenge of infobesity. So,
That's right.
wow, we're a little bit over time. This is an exciting conversation. In fact, we'll have to have a part two of this. But Stratus, what's your prediction for the next year in terms of where we're going with artificial intelligence? And then what's the best way for people to be able to reach you?
Um, Let me answer the easy one. You can reach me at LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to correspond before we get on the phone or get on a voice call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a judge at an angel forum in the Silicon Valley. So if you pitch through that forum, I'll be there. And then afterwards, we can have a conversation about your startup. Um, Going back to the prediction, there are a couple of things that are part of my thesis, and there are things that I don't know, like Web3. I'm not your guy. Crypto. I'm not your guy. But when it comes down to AI, I'm interested in a number of things. I'm interested in supply chain. As you know,
Mm-hmm.
supply chain. Any deficiencies in the supply chain has a major impact in the economy. So companies that understand universal buying, de-risking purchases, helping identify the right vendor, and help me as a purchaser trade money for time in a sophisticated way are companies that are going to make a significant impact. So that's one. There's a barrier to entry. Companies that already have a lot of customers are more likely to succeed than those that just start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So that's one. I'm not giving up on generative AI. I know there's skepticism out there, but it's capturing my attention. Um, one of my recent investments through Project Voice Capital, that has a rolling fund that you can also participate, was to look at companies in that space. So, for example, generating content, video content, is very expensive. Like, look at you and I. We're sitting here having a conversation. I'm pretty sure you've had some preparation to do because you know a lot about me. But think about writing a narrative, and that generates our video, right? That reduces your cost, and I think that's interesting. I played in the drug discovery space with variational encoders and adversarial neural networks for generating molecules that bind onto a property to modify a behavior. Big pharma, I don't see them embracing it yet, but when they do, I think we'll see a drastic acceleration in drug discovery. Edge-based AI, I think it's going to be the thing next year, in particular for voice, sound, and computer vision on the edge. And the edge is not just a chip on a refrigerator or in your autonomous vehicle. It can be in space. If you take the example from space, when you're observing an area, you can video feed that down to a ground station that can use a machine learning model to classify it or a human to observe it, but there's latency involved. And you want your reaction time to be super fast. So doing that on the edge is extremely important, and there are techniques to do that. So I think that is also very interesting. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting year. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff happening. This idea of emotion and compassion woven into these models. My partner and Eva developed the Morpheus, which is a really interesting model. And again, compassion and emotion. I mean, we got to look at it from my perspective. Some of these models going forward are going to be kind of like your grandmother, your yaya, that cared about you and loved you no matter what, and was making you quarter-bietas and moussaka and all those things that you like, and like crazy, no matter what. Those kind of, my prediction is those kind of models are going to be ones we need for the future, not just pragmatic, but ones that have emotion, compassion to help us get through it. And all of us together around the world. I know we have a lot of viewers from Africa, from Indonesia, Malaysia, Latin America, Europe. But one of the things that we need to do is we need to learn how to work together to be able to solve a lot of these problems. Stratos is right. I mean, we couldn't even get a roll of toilet paper, and we have quantum computers. And what's wrong with that picture? At the same time, by 2050, we have to double the food supply to feed everybody, because we can't increase the number of livestock, because 26% of the pollution is methane gas from cows. We got to figure out how to be able to help us live better, more interesting lives. At the same time, we've got global climate change, which, as we can see even today, is having a global dramatic impact on our weather with these bomb cyclones and increases in temperatures, Gulf Streams slowing down, et cetera. We need to bind together, to work together. And it's great to have people like you, Stratos, that are right on the cutting edge of it. Appreciate you taking your time today. I really am grateful for that. And to my audience out there, my name is Gary Fowler, and I am the host of GSD Presents, Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And remember, GSD stands for Get Shit Done. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And for you out there, enjoy your holiday season, and we'll be back to you soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, Stratos, for taking your time out of your schedule.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Joining us one more time today. Thank you.